Welcome to Common Sense Ohio. Brett Johnson here with you. Norm here. We've got a guest. Steve's out doing his stuff in the real world, the good stuff, that sort of thing. And today's episode is brought to you by the letter V, as in vote.
Yes.
And the numbers 11-5-24. Tuesday, November 5th, 24. It's important.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Do some homework. Go out and vote.
Adult Sesame Street.
Adult Sesame
very well
Street.
done.
Exactly.
The letter V.
Exactly. So we've got we're going to go off a little off of our format that you're used to hearing week after week because we've got a very special guest. I'm going to let Norm introduce her, but I think this is going to be one of those episodes we're going to use as a basis to refer to a lot because it's going to be some insights on Ohio corporate welfare that we talk about a lot, whether it's national, but a lot of Ohio, because that hits us harder than anything else. Right. But Norm, let's jump into it.
Sure. Our guest is Eileen DeRolf, and Eileen spent a career as a high school teacher.
Middle school
teacher in Westerville, teaching science. And she is politically, as a civilian, as a citizen, advocate for property rights and the right to control your community, the public having a say-so. And in her particular case involves Pataskala. To frame this a little bit, in previous episodes, we've talked about Ohio rolling out these grants and abatements and other kinds of special development deals for meat packing plants in Ohio, for the egg farm in Croton, which was an environmental disaster. It affected my property, actually, in Johnstown, and a host of other things. There's a windshield, a glass company called Fuyao over in Springfield that's got all kinds of worker violations that are being investigated by the Immigration and Naturalization Service and Homeland Security. And then, of course, we've got Intel in Licking County, Amazon, Google. Microsoft just announced this week that they're going to stick 3 new data centers. And so this is probably going to eventually bring in nuclear power, additional power sources in Ohio. So all of these cascading things are going to affect the quality of life for citizens all across Ohio and are right now. And Eileen is in the middle of a pretty epic struggle between the citizens of Pataskala and the elites in Pataskala that, control the government there and this big corporation. So Eileen, give us a little background on this. It's called Longy and Illuminate.
It's Longi.
Longi is how you pronounce it?
Yes. In Pataskala, a stealth effort was made to ultimately bring into Pataskala a solar panel assembly plant. This solar panel assembly plant was put into a building that had previously been built by the original constructor, Red Rock, and Red Rock achieved a 15-year tax abatement on this building before it was ultimately sold to the entities that now own it and are housing the solar panel assembly plant. The disturbing part about it is, one, again, how they snuck it into the community, but also that it's 51% owned by an American company, Invenergy, which is Chicago-based, and a 49% owned by Communist China. The corporation is Longi, but that's all capital letters, Longi. But Longi, really, it's a communist country. They really, on paper, own it, but the CCP really controls everything in China. Private property is really not an option. So we now have in our community then this entity along with roughly 100, I don't want to give the exact number, but roughly 100 Chinese nationals working in this factory. And theoretically, they're going home at some point, but they've been there now for most of a year.
Wow.
They are able to roam freely around the communities with, as far as I can tell, and I've talked to some pretty high-level people, unmonitored. And yet, and every day, twice a day, there are 4 buses, charter buses, that pick them up at their apartments, and there are various numbers of apartment complexes in New Albany where they live, and then they are bused to Illuminate USA, and then after their shift is up, and I believe their shifts are 12-hour shifts, they're bused back home. Now, most disturbing, and it is let's just say Mike Pompeo has emphatically stated, and he was Secretary of State and in Trump's administration, he emphatically states that if you have Chinese nationals working in factories like Illuminate USA, then they will indeed surveil. And the path that they take to and from their apartments goes very close to a Google data center and a Facebook data center and Intel. And,
let me just ask a couple of questions about this. Are these Chinese nationals management, or are they factory workers?
They are factory. Oh, well, I think they're both.
Okay.
The majority of them, I believe, are factory workers.
Wow.
Yes.
So what happened to the American jobs?
There are a bunch now. They've really ramped it up, and there are at least 1,000 jobs there.
Okay.
But the jobs piece is not where the focus should be.
Gotcha.
You know, there's like a silver lining to every bad moment. And the silver lining is, yes, some of the money is coming to Pataskala via these employees. And the reason I'm going to emphasize that is when, in this case at least, I'm not going to say I'm an expert on tax abatements, but in this case, the tax abatement, 15-year tax abatement that Illuminate USA received means that they don't have to pay any real estate taxes for 15 years. Well, somebody's got to cover that cost. And who covers it is the employees. And the employees, they
through their income taxes.
Yes, through their income tax. I believe they normally it's a 1% income tax, and theirs is, I can't remember, like a in the neighborhood of 2%. But to me, it's just appalling to me. You've got 2 multi-billion-dollar corporations who pay less taxes than me living in Pataskala, and they are dumping this tax burden onto workers who likely make less than me.
Yeah, and the surrounding property owners like you.
Well,
as well as the workers. You're picking up the tab.
Well, they actually are supposedly they cover it all. Now, whether that's exactly right or not, I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty complicated because you get credit for the income taxes in where you live, as well as where you work. So for each worker, it could be a little different math.
Yes,
right. But I see what you're saying. Pataskala does get some of that income tax.
Oh, yes, and they love it. They love it to the extent that they will take the side of the Chinese owning warehouse over their citizens' concerns about the warehouse. It's really disturbing.
I might just mention, because you brought up Mike Pompeo. Mike Pompeo was not only Secretary of State, he was also the head of the CIA.
Correct.
So he knows a few things. Let me just say.
He knows a lot.
If he says that these people are engaged in
surveillance,
if not espionage, at least surveillance. They're gathering intelligence, and China is a world adversary of the United States. They're building artificial islands in the Pacific. They harvest organs from Uyghurs. From people that have a religion, and they put them in concentration camps and against their will harvest organs out of these people. They suppress free speech, et cetera, et cetera. it's not the Chinese people per se; it's their government.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. And that is one of the things that I always try to discuss when I'm in these moments where I'm talking about China. You know, our city council, in essence, did label us as xenophobes,
Of course,
which is which is typical of
Sure.
someone who's, calling people names rather than having a real conversation is kind of how you know that they really know they're really not maybe on the high ground.
Right.
But nonetheless, it needs to be made really clear that those of us who push back about a CCP-controlled China are really the real friends of the Chinese people. We are the ones that are pushing back against a vicious government.
Right.
We don't want it here, and we don't want it. And if we don't want it here, and we can weaken them in any way, then we help those people
Right.
in China.
Right.
So we are actually pro-Chinese people, but we are totally anti-CCP.
And there are Chinese ex-Chinese nationals in the U.S. leading this movement that you're talking about to weaken the Chi-Coms. People like Gordon Chang, people who have been subjected to some of this political terrorism. That the Chinese have even set up their own, if you will, like police stations in the United States to police Americans who have relatives back in China. They'll bring in an American citizen of Chinese descent into these police stations in the United States, and they found them in New York City, for example. They'll bring them in and say, if you don't do X, Y, Z, or shut up, or whatever they want you to do, your relatives back here, in Shanghai
Are in trouble.
We're going to do things to them. And, people don't realize how vicious they are.
They are vicious, and the CCP Chinese-led faction is deeply ingrained in so many layers of America as we speak.
Yes, these Confucius centers on university campuses.
Not just let's just say in Licking County, in Pataskala City Schools, we have 2 school districts. Licking Heights School District actually, a number of years ago, actually had a Confucius Institute.
Wow.
In their building. Now, that would mean that they teach Chinese culture, they teach Mandarin, they even may take the kids over to China, and
like Tim Waltz did.
Like Tim Waltz did on many, many an occasion. And this allows China then to influence and groom these people to get them to imagine China is a much better place than it is. All that said, not very long ago, the U.S. government, the feds, outlawed Confucius schools. But if you go to Licking Heights School District website, you will still see they do all the things that I just said. However, they've taken down their little logo that connects them to a organization that indicates that they paid money to Licking Heights in order to fund this program.
So I was reading about you and the way I found you was the pretty progressive news site, Bloomberg, had a major article about Pataskala, Ohio, which is generally in the central Ohio area for people who don't know. The way that Longi has insinuated itself into your community, like even when they offer internships into the solar panel manufacturing plant, your investigation and people looking into this have discovered that it's Ohio, JobsOhio, and other kinds of programs in Ohio that actually are paying those interns. So it's our own tax money going through the Chinese factory, half owned by the Chinese, 4951, say it's half owned, into the pocketbooks of these interns.
All right,
we're paying for the whole thing.
Well, let me stop.
They're not even doing the nice thing about paying for these interns. It's the Ohio taxpayer paying for their employee interns who are working for them. We're paying for it.
Well, let me do a couple things since you brought up a couple things that are important. When I agree with you, 49%, 50%, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Well, that blah, blah, blah is huge.
Sure.
And the reason it's huge is because most legislation in this country that has attempted to remove Chinese ownership out of their state says that the Chinese company cannot own the majority of it. When Invenergy arranged their various shell companies and then eventually settled back and did all their maneuvering to create ultimately the final movement on the chessboard to create this new corporation, Illuminate USA, they had to know, let's put it that way, they had to know that 49% is the most they could give China.
Sure.
But they needed China here because China has and guards zealously their trade secrets, even as they steal ours.
Yes.
They did not want any. They could bring in the best technology to produce solar panels, and Invenergy needed it to be the front guy that would then probably do most of the marketing. Okay, so having said that, Illuminate USA is taking home just as it's hard to say, and it's really hard to find out how the money's being divided. But it is important for everybody to understand that China is here in America for a number of reasons. But likely the single most important reason China is here in this factory is because of the Inflation Reduction Act. When it was created, and I leave it to the listener to decide whether it's intentional or unintentional, oh my goodness, there was a loophole. And the Inflation Reduction Act, which was meant to incentivize American manufacturing, suddenly the money could also be paid out to foreign entities like China. So this one factory is here, and this one factory, according to the Wall Street Journal, is eligible for up to $350 million a year.
Wow.
That is your tax dollars, folks, your tax dollars that is being drugged out of this country to enrich China, our number one geopolitical adversary.
The nice people who make the predicate chemicals to make fentanyl.
Exactly.
You know, really, really great people.
Yes. Yes. Now let me go back to that business.
And by people, I mean the Chi-Com government officials.
Yes.
Let me be very clear.
Yes.
Right.
I'm not in any way trying to besmirch Chinese people. And you know, stop with the xenophobic, accusations. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We're talking about government policy
Right.
here.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I'm going to slip back to something else you said, because the truth is this company, when we first heard, we'll do Ohio Jobs at some point. When we first heard here in Pataskala, the average citizen, that this factory was going to arrive and it was 49% owned by China, we began showing up at the city council meetings. Now, any of you who have attended a meeting and understands what Robert's Rules is, knows that they can be used to strangle the opposition from speaking out. And certainly, while many people came, and remember, I believe that it used to be, now it could be anything, used to be the number one fear for people was public speaking.
Right.
So these people
Sure.
who, most of them had never attended a city council meeting and did not know the protocol, they did not, they took their little courage in hand. They went up to that podium and they spoke. And after many people spoke, you'd go sit down, and then the city council would move on like they had heard nothing. They had seen nothing.
Yes.
Now, it took many city council meetings before they finally, at the end of the meeting, where they always have an opportunity to say anything they want, they proceeded to basically unload on us and tell us, that we were silly about this or silly about that, or we were xenophobic about this. It was weeks and weeks People were frustrated. People did not come back because they just felt so unwelcome. And then in the newspapers, the Mayor Mike Compton, would say things like they were rude, they were loud, they're a pitchfork carrying mob.
Sure.
I mean, they would say things like that. The average age of these people, I think we're looking probably 65.
Yeah, long-term residents.
Yes, worried about their kids and their grandkids in their country, and they were treated terribly.
Yeah.
So, at any rate,
Let's if you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about the overall. And the Chinese piece is it might be even the major piece, but it is one piece of this. The other piece, you mentioned JobsOhio. The other piece of this is the corporate welfare system in general, and the way that it has affected the people around the Intel plant. The way it rolled out sounds very similar to the way the Longi Illuminate USA project in Pataskala rolled out, where it's a fait accompli. It's already a done deal. The skids are greased, and the people are just told that this is what's going to happen. And I have many times on this show have used the analogy that if Norm wanted to open Norm's lawnmower repair in my garage, I would have to advertise under the zoning change laws. I would have to advertise for several weeks in the local newspaper of record. I would have to mail letters to each of my neighbors, all of this in advance of a zoning meeting to decide, yes, no, do I get to open my lawnmower shop? These major corporations go right to the governor. They go right to these development offices of the state of Ohio. And they offer, all these bells and all these wonderful things are going to happen. And I am finding that the politicians do not do diligence at all. They want their name associated with a big project and progress and all of these euphemisms that they use for tearing up the countryside, taking away green space and farmland, and popping up a factory on fertile ground instead of going to brownfield sites like you have inner city in Columbus, where there's already employees that need jobs. There's already, earth that's been bulldozed over, factory, just if you go on Fifth Street on the east side in Columbus, there's acre after acre of knockdown factory sites that these kinds of plants could be put up, and you could really, offer then money to the Columbus City schools, which need the money. Lots of things could happen. Now, the Chinese piece is disturbing on a number of levels, and it to me, it's an emergency that this gets addressed. Just like the Chinese party buying up farmland near U.S. military bases. So what I want to ask is a little bit about how does this happen at the state house level, Eileen? And then number two, what kind of changes in the law, like making NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, that Ohio officials, probably like the mayor out there and the county commissioners and the township trustees, they sign these NDAs and they NDAs with the developers and with the companies. And their first duty is to the public, but they sign that away and they give the right of privacy to the developer over the citizen that they're supposed to serve.
Okay.
It's a big topic.
Yeah, well, it is. And I'm going to, we're roaming here because there's just so much to cover. But
we're going to bring Eileen back.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if that's good news or bad news.
Yeah.
You decide.
No, this is we can't cover this in one show.
No.
But I will tell you that if you want to learn more about this and you want to learn more about how China is embedding itself and has embedded itself in America, I do have an excellent website that I created, and it's Keep, as in KEEP, AFA.com. That stands for Keep America for Americans.com. KeepAFA.com. If you go there, you will see that there are 10 short, and I believe you'll find them very interesting, lessons and the lesson series is called China's Silent War
That's
on
awesome.
America.
That's awesome.
And it will be the easiest way for you to get caught up on this critical topic.
Once a teacher,
Always a teacher. That's
and
right.
that's fantastic.
Yes.
And that's your work. I mean, that is you doing the hard labor of putting that
Yes.
together.
Yes.
That is awesome.
I had some people helping me put up the website, helping me to proofread my stuff. But yes, believe me, that took me many. You don't want to know how much time. It was a little insane.
It takes
A
is.
full-time job,
Yes.
I'm
Well,
sure.
because you want to put something up there that doesn't look, I'll excuse my French, half-assed.
right.
You want it to look intelligent,
Yes.
that it's researched, and it's well done because you want to be respected for
Yeah.
what you put up there.
Footnotes and all
but
that.
I
Yeah.
don't. But I will tell you, my goal is never to intimidate the reader with great big words and convoluted this, and you will find it pleasant reading. And in each I tried in each lesson to have one short video and a relatively short article with a little bit of lead in on these things. And then you will find that it should only take you no more than 25 minutes at most. And along the way, a number of these lessons have action items where you can actually send letters to the offending officials who have aided and abetted our number one political adversary.
I wanted to, and I think you may have been going this direction too, but let's readdress that. So, yes, you have those that you should be saying, slap their hands like,
Yes.
bad for you. Who are the friendly ears then? Who should we be going to that are
Who is helping on this issue?
exactly?
We have no friendly ears except the average guy. That's
Well,
that's kind of
well,
your.
let me because I saw an article and I want to ask you
Oh,
what
Like,
your thoughts on
you
'cause I-
mentioned Mike Pompeo. So
Right.
like,
Oh, I see.
On
I
the-
see.
yeah, in
Okay.
regards to the state legislature. So I noted, correct me if this is right or wrong. Maybe these are two people that we can say, okay, you're on our side with this. State Rep Angie King from Salina,
absolutely.
and Roy Klopfenstein.
Klopfenstein, yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry. From both Republican bill,
Yes.
Ohio House Bill 212. I'd love to get one or both of them. I mean, once the
Yeah.
reelection kind of is all done,
Sure.
to bring them on, if that makes sense to talk about that.
No, it absolutely
start
does. Get
this-
them here and get me here.
Start
Boy,
this
I could really,
wave
yes.
of okay, let's flesh
Right.
this out.
We'll give
How do we change?
we'll give Eileen the request
Yeah.
that she come
Right.
back with them.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And okay, so I'm going to go a little bit higher. I want to ask your perspective on. So Sherrod Brown also has tried to put some stuff
Legislation.
together. Is that good stuff he's putting together as well?
And Marco Rubio is on fire with good stuff too.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
But
Because what I'm
yes.
leaning toward is it's not an R&D thing. It can be both, and we're
well,
working together on this
Well,
stuff,
and,
if we can.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I'm sorry I did not
No,
mention
you're
these
fine.
because I was thinking who in the community.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Whereas you're going big picture.
We're going
I will
big
tell you
that can change
yes.
legislation. Yeah.
Yes, I will tell you, I have talked to Sherrod Brown's chief of staff and other staff members. I've talked to Balderson. I've talked to, Federal Representative Balderson. I've talked to several state representatives. I do have a connection because what happened to some degree is this election, they're all out
yeah.
scurrying to get
sure.
elected.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
But immediately after this election, we want to get busy. And the reason that I need to get busy is because hardly any of them, like virtually none of them, even Angie King and Roy Klopfenstein, do not know what is in this document, which talks specifically about Pataskala and all the lessons that should be learned ASAP about how China can take over America one community at a time by doing exactly what they are doing at Pataskala. That's big stuff.
Yeah.
And so
They romance public officials. I'm using that word as a term of art, but like they turn them into a bro. Like, oh, we're this passive,
Well,
nice group of people.
and it looks as though they're, and I get the representative. They want these nice clean sound bites that we did that. I did this. I brought jobs. I brought jobs.
Right.
But the devil's in the details.
Yes, what
That's
jobs
right.
did you bring
Exactly.
in? And what nation did you drag in?
Right.
And
That's
how
never
much?
brought up.
And how much did
Did
you
it cost?
disgorge of our tax dollars
To do it.
to do it?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and I'm going to go back, and thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to go back to what you had asked a while back.
sorry.
No, that's
No,
okay.
there's
Yeah.
just that is the problem with this with this saga.
There's
that
a
I
lot of
have
moving
here.
lot of
pieces.
There,
parts to it,
yes,
yeah.
and you can jump left and right, but you're always on something good. At least I hope you think that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you ask about the state. I don't believe this. Most people on the state level, senators or representatives, I believe they understand, most of them, that China is a problem. But I don't think they do have the details. Oh, they know that there's an economic price to pay. Everybody knows that our Walmart is full of Chinese this and Chinese that, and American manufacturing's not strong, and they get that. They may even get the surveillance piece that China's over here trying to build near military bases or near
Affect
data
our
centers.
elections through TikTok.
Yeah,
et
they get
cetera.
some of that.
Sure.
They don't get, though, how they can embed into communities. And that's important because ultimately it's like all of us. If we all took care of our local governments and made them clean and strack,
Right.
then we wouldn't need the feds.
Yeah.
But same thing, if we don't take care of each community, then all our communities go to pot, and here we are, a whole country that's a mess. So we really have to look at these little pieces to see how collectively they make the country stronger or weaker depending upon our policies. However,
Just like you want to run good people for the school board.
yeah, exactly.
Because it starts there.
Local.
Local.
Local, yes. Now, so we'll go back to, so the state, I think, is kind of out of it. And although I believe, I'm not naming names, but I believe near the top, know stuff. And the reason I believe they know stuff is because they have to know that JobsOhio has their little fingers in seeding Ohio with Chinese companies. JobsOhio, I believe it was March of 23, put out a press release, and this is typical, and they've done it before on other Chinese manufacturing situations. They, which means it's kind of a pattern with them. They will offer, behind closed doors on this particular building, they met with Invenergy and Longi, and then JobsOhio. They all signed a non-disclosure agreement,
Which should be illegal.
It
which
should be illegal.
And then JobsOhio proceeded to offer $4 million so that ultimately Illuminate USA would locate in Pataskala.
So JobsOhio, right, is funded by the taxpayers of Ohio.
No, it is not.
It is not. Where'd that
This
$4
is-
million come from?
Now, there's just another piece. I mean, you can.
But it is an Ohio agency.
Oh, it
isn't
is. It's an Ohio Economic Development Agency.
Because its former name was,
It's under the
No.
Department of Development.
No,
wasn't it?
no, hang on.
Okay.
John Kasich, those many years ago,
Yeah.
offered without any competitive bids to sell Ohio's liquor operation to JobsOhio.
Okay.
Okay.
So once upon a time, when you bought a bottle of liquor in Ohio, the money went to Ohio to offset whatever the heck they ended up offsetting.
Ohio Department of Liquor Control, et cetera.
Yeah, but no, to offset, the profit had to be to help Ohio.
Well, sure, it went
Now-
into the Ohio coffers.
Yes,
into
but
state
now
government.
it goes into JobsOhio's coffer, and because they're now considered a private entity, you research it. And you
It's a
see
public-private partnership
It
kind
is.
of thing.
It is
that-
non-transparent.
So it's
That I knew.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
been somewhat recent that
So
it
it's
changed that
it's
too.
not
Yeah,
it's so
it
it's not
kinda
an
did,
agency of the state anymore. It's
I'll tell
it's
you.
a nonprofit. That's what
I
you're
don't-
saying.
I'll tell you what. Nonprofit as in it doesn't make any money?
No,
Profit?
no, hon.
Okay,
No,
just
no.
a legal term.
Yeah,
Right, a legal term. Yeah,
You're saying
exactly.
it's no longer part of state government. It is a separate entity.
Yes.
It's a private
Yes.
entity,
Right.
and I'm
Yes.
sure it's a nonprofit.
Okay, and you can do more research on it. It is hard to find much out about it. There's even articles about how you can't find much
a little-
about it.
so
I mean, there are. I can
No.
get you one as soon as I go home.
I totally believe you.
Yes.
Minutia.
As a nonprofit, a lot of its records are not accessible. You could not file a FOIA
Yeah.
request, say to the Red Cross or to the the SPCA or whatever. Those are private nonprofit corporations. So the beauty of setting, if I have this right, if JobsOhio is no longer a state government agency, the ability for the press to penetrate it,
The door's closed.
the door's closed.
The door is closed.
Except for their IRS filings,
Right.
if you can get those.
Right. Okay. I'm fine with all that. But the bottom line is these guys are out there seeding
Wow.
Ohio with these. Now I'll give you an
Wow.
example because you brought them up a little bit ago. It was only probably roughly 2 months ago that Fuyao,
Was rated
which is a glass. I think the world's biggest glass
second biggest. Yeah.
a glass manufacturer in the world.
In the world, right.
And they were set up significant. And I'm sorry, I don't have
Over in
these numbers.
Springfield, Ohio.
Over in Springfield, a number of years ago, and recently they are under investigation, and there were like 20 plus locations that were part of this
Yes.
sting operation.
Apartment buildings
Yes.
with instead of 2 people living in an apartment, they would have crammed like
Oh,
15
my.
people.
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy.
and they-
Just
and-
like the Croton Egg Farm scandal.
yeah,
Same
only
thing.
yeah,
Gotcha.
and so it was human smuggling, I believe,
Yeah,
was one
sure.
of it.
Yeah.
Money laundering was
Right.
what they're being looked
Yeah.
at. There were just a whole host of things that are being looked at. Now, the day after that story broke, Bernie Marino put out a press release and said that Sherrod Brown had, when this company first showed up, given them a grant for, I believe, $35,000. Now, again, why are we whether it's Illuminate USA, whether it's Fuyao's glass company, why are we incentivizing China to come here to do business? Why are we not incentivizing American business?
right.
It's just like, to me, this is just
There's
wrong.
there's a big disconnect.
Yes,
Well-
and also, in another article on Fuyao, one of the state representatives said, that they knew that JobsOhio had also incentivized this company.
Well, for sure. Eileen, we're going to go on to some
Yeah,
our other
okay.
news, but I think I think a lot of questions are out there. Why did 20,000 Haitians get located in Springfield, for example? Why did Fuyao get located in Springfield? I'm going to look at the camera and just note this without making an accusation. It's no secret that Governor DeWine is from Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
just think about that. Think about where the money goes,
Well,
et cetera.
and you brought up a lot of good things, and we'll leave it at that. That do some looking into it.
Yeah.
Ask some questions.
Well, we're going to have Eileen back.
Yeah.
Let's go into our election predictions.
Okay, sounds good.
And Eileen, stick around.
Yeah,
Feel free to
okay.
jump in.
yeah.
All right.
All right. So where are we going to go
I'm
first?
pretty timid. I don't know.
Yes, you're definitely a wallflower.
Yeah.
Brett, what did you predict as far as whether it was going to be at the time, January, we were predicting about Biden versus Trump. Of course, now it's Harris versus Trump.
Yeah, I don't remember what I did.
Okay, so
Anyway.
I predicted Trump was going to win.
Okay.
I remember you predicted there would be no debate between Biden and
That
Trump.
I did. Missed that.
Sure. Well, everybody was blown away that
Yeah.
Biden wanted to do one in June.
Yeah.
Which he fouled up, and that's how Harris got in.
Exactly.
The other thing that
Yeah.
I predicted, and I think this will happen should Trump win. I think he's going to win, but if he wins, I also predicted that there would be, riots. There would be, public destruction. It would be basically like BLM summer all over again, and I think we're in for that. So I hope he wins, and I hope it's peaceful. I didn't like the rioting that took place on January 6th. I know Trump spoke out against it. He said peacefully and patriotically, but some people got carried away. And I think the reason they got carried away on January 6th is they looked at the preceding summer where BLM was burning down public buildings and doing all this crazy stuff, and those people didn't get arrested. So they figured, well, hell, if the one side can do it, we can do it. And I think it has led to a deterioration in our culture of the respect for the law.
Right.
On by extremists on both sides.
Yeah.
But
So-
isn't there some belief that there were some doors left open?
Come on up
and-
to the mic.
Yes, that there was some enticement going on.
Come on up to the
That
mic.
there was some enticement going on, and that might have contributed. If a door gets open, people tend to walk through it.
Well, there
And-
was foreign money involved in financing the riots, if that's what you're... Yes, there definitely was.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
been documented.
Yes,
Sure.
and let's just say that the amount of damage done doesn't even approximate what the kind of damage we're talking of BLM putting small businesses out of business and destroying whole neighborhoods. I mean,
Well, they burned down a police station in Madison, or excuse me, in Minneapolis. They burned down a police station, right? Nothing like that happened on January 6th.
No. So this is, to me, degrees of wrong, and degrees of wrong should be acknowledged rather than made to be equivalent, because this is not equivalent in my humble opinion.
Well, other things are going to happen. What do you
Yes.
think about issue one?
Well, I
Brett?
was going to say I'll give a prediction on the election,
And then on
which
Bernie versus Sherrod.
So I what I'm thinking is, and again, we don't know. It's a crystal ball. I think Harris is going to win the Electoral College.
Wow.
I think Trump's going to win
my.
the general popular,
Okay.
the popular vote.
What about issue one in Ohio?
Issue one is going to pass.
Yeah,
There's been
I agree with you.
Those
been very-
those against it haven't.
Yes,
From my perspective,
It's very
have
one-sided.
not
Made the case.
made the case.
I agree.
They have not made the case,
Right.
which bad on them. Seriously,
and
because
it's a real shame.
because it's an education piece that to understand what you're voting
So
for.
10 years ago, Ohio's citizens put in an independent redistricting board just 10 years ago. And now they're getting ready to throw that out because the ads, the miseducation of Ohio voters is that politicians equal bad. And we just talked about some bad politicians doing this corporate welfare. We had a big discussion just now. But there are also politicians that are against corporate welfare. So being a politician isn't necessarily bad or good. It just is. And the one thing about an elected official is you can throw them out if you don't like them.
Yeah.
This 15-person panel under issue one that's going to be set up is going to be unaccountable. They're not if they make a districting decision that you disagree with, okay, and gerrymander some kind of bizarre district, there is no recourse to go back and throw that person out of office like there is now. You can throw your state representative and your senator out of, you vote against them, but you can't vote against this new 15-person panel.
And it isn't even that simple. It's a 15-person panel. There are, how many steps are there from the beginning to where you
Right.
get to the 15-person panel?
It's a
and
joke.
What could go wrong?
Oh, yeah,
You
nothing.
know, so it's
idea-
convoluted. It is.
The idea that they're going to be angel wings, okay, on unelected, because they're unelected, somehow they're nobler than
Yes.
elected people. That's
Yes.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the other thing is, let's talk about Bernie versus Sherrod
right,
Brown. What
right.
do you think on that
I
one?
think Brown's going to be in. I think
Yeah.
Brown.
I think
I
he's up.
just do.
I think
I
he's
just
up
do.
1 point. I
Yeah,
think they're
I just
saying,
do.
and Bernie is supposed to be closing the gap, but so many about a third of Ohioans have already voted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those votes are banked. They're already there.
Yeah.
I know they say the Republicans have done a better job of turning out the early, absentee ballots. Great. But did they split the ticket and vote for Trump and then vote for Brown instead of, voting for Bernie? I guess we'll find out. For me, I think it's too close to call.
Yeah.
I want.
Yeah, exactly.
We've had
It
Bernie.
is.
We've
It
had
is.
Bernie on our show, Eileen. He's been down here on the round
Yeah.
table. We had him for an hour, and what I love about that is two things. His superpower is that he came from a foreign country. He was born in Colombia. So he is not eligible for higher office. And he says, that's my superpower. And then the other thing is he was on the board of the term limits movement. So he said, at most, I'll serve 2 terms and I'm gone. And he comes from the private sector. So he's not a guy who's been in government his entire life and thinks like a bureaucrat.
Yes, feels comfortable spending other people's money.
Right.
I mean, really.
I have some hot news.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think this is kind of interesting. I call it the garbage wars, and this exploded over this past week, right? So you had this this guy who's got a show on the internet called Kill Tony. It's enormous. It might be the second after Joe Rogan. It might be the second most popular podcast, they say. And it's a Youngstown comedian, Youngstown, Ohio comedian named Tony Hinchcliffe. And the show is kind of dirty. I've watched the show a couple times with my son, and it's very gynecological. I mean, it's locker room humor,
Right.
and it's gross, and it's not fit for children to watch. So then the children, of course, want to watch.
Of course. Well, yeah, exactly.
So they invite this guy to be the opening act at Trump's Madison Square Garden show. And Tony from Youngstown tells just not even a funny thing, but he says, there's a floating island of garbage in the ocean. Well, yeah, we know that there's plastic out there. It's like 40 square miles in the middle of the Pacific of all this stuff dumped off of cruise ships and dumped into the ocean. Anyway, he goes on to say, yeah, and its name is Puerto Rico. And then the whole audience at Madison Square Garden kind of like, it went silent, and they were like, oh, like, what a dumb thing to say, because Trump obviously needs all the support he can get, including the Puerto Rican community.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, Trump himself and of course the Democrats, they all came out and condemned what was said and disassociated himself from those words. And then Biden this week, I'm sure, and not coordinating with the Harris campaign, he decides to call all of Trump's supporters. He says, yeah, there's a lot of garbage out there floating around, and they're Trump supporters. They're the garbage. So then the Democrats immediately said he didn't mean that and whatever, and Trump's called on Harris to disassociate herself. She hasn't done it yet. But basically what has happened now in the garbage wars is that the White House stenographer pool put out a press release yesterday saying when the White House sent over the transcript to the National Archives under the Presidential Records Act, they changed what Joe Biden said from the garbage referring to Trump supporters to the what they changed it to is they added an apostrophe and said he was talking about the garbage coming out of the mouths of Trump supporters. Oh, well, that's not what he said.
No.
So anyway, this is going to go on. The next 5 days are just going to be insane.
Yeah,
Brett.
they are.
They're just
Yeah.
going to.
Well, and that's a good example of why you've not heard anything from Biden, because he's about as loose wire as Trump can be in regards to just being misunderstood, not speaking clearly. Yeah, ultimately, both of them are bad at that.
And I think he's bitter at the fact that she took the nomination.
It's possible. It's possible. That's true.
The only thing I wonder is whether he has the mental acuity to actually knowingly sabotage her campaign, or is Jill whispering in his ear because she, I have to think, hated how her husband was and continues to be dismissed, even though he's still technically the president of the United States.
There is a case. She is not popular within her own party. Mm-hmm. There is a case to be made that Trump being limited to just one more term, that, people like Gavin Newsom, who definitely wants to run for president, right? they don't want to wait 8 years for two Kamala
Gotcha.
terms.
Okay.
There is a school of thought that Trump comes in, they'll continue to demonize him, they'll
bet.
continue to try to gridlock him. He will be the big baddie that they can then run against in theory, right? Like, oh, this last 4 years of Trump's second term were just horrible. Vote for me, Gavin Newsom. So there's a school of thought that says that secretly passive aggressive that a lot of Democrats want her to lose
That is possible.
Jeez.
because Trump will go ahead and do his executive orders, and those can all be undone by the next, just like Biden undid them.
Yeah, right.
Well, can I make another point
Yeah,
of what you said?
Yeah.
Now, forgive me, folks. I don't do names, and I can see his face. Who's the dude that owns the? Is it Maverick?
Oh, Mark Cuban.
Okay,
Oh,
well,
for God's
let's
sake.
do Mark Cuban for a
Let's
minute.
do that.
Who just got done I believe yesterday, saying that there are no intelligent conservative ladies. Is that close enough?
And also he said
that's not a
strong,
quote, but
strong,
intelligent conservative women.
like as if Sarah Huckabee Sanders, right?
Yeah, oh gosh,
right.
She'd eat him for lunch.
Like governor of
Yes.
Arkansas,
Yes.
like she is a wallflower.
Yes.
Come on.
Well, and any number of other ones that
Yeah.
you could name.
That's
However, we do not see the left chastising him
No.
and asking him to do an apology.
Yeah.
They only want our side to do the apologies. And
He did that on The View, by the way, which is a show hosted by 4 women.
Yes.
And he's saying you're all very intelligent
Yes.
and you're all very strong.
yeah, which is like right.
And I'm like, so are you actually saying that, people like Nikki Haley, who fought Trump tooth and nail for the nomination, you actually saying she's not strong and intelligent? What's he talking
Well,
about?
that was just a huge mistake, but it still comes back to my point that, they aren't going to make Biden apologize. They're going to change his words.
That's
But
right.
it's always about us eating crow
That's
repeatedly, and no matter how much crow they fed us, they'd keep saying, eat more. So I just think that's, again, just one more of those moments.
Eileen, you very perceptively stole my outrage of the week.
No!
That was, I think it's just like, it was.
Does that mean I can't come back?
No, that means you are like plugged into the zeitgeist of what's happening here. I wanted to also, just before I forget, you referred to this document. This is this is on your website.
No, that particular,
It's not.
I would say this is a short version of the key points
On the website.
that you will get
Okay.
if you go to keepafa.com, KEEPAFA.com. But it will also illuminate you on how China works.
Right.
It will, because I'll tell you what, and I'll just do this briefly because that's what y'all need to know. China has a military right now that arguably is at least as strong as ours.
Their Navy is now bigger.
Yes. And that is a huge national security issue. Secondly, they have a gigantic program called Belt and Road Initiative. And the Belt and Road Initiative, in that they dump massive amounts of money into developing countries to loan it to them so that the country can produce infrastructure to make the country stronger. But if the countries do not pay it back, then China has the capability of just taking it. But more concerning is they're making alliances around the world by doing this, and they are creating military bases closer, new locations that are closer to America. I mean,
well, for example, if I can just jump in, China now arguably down in Panama controls the canal.
Exactly. And that,
which
yes.
I will remind people, right? Jimmy Carter gave Panama the right to control that and gave it back to them, so to speak, in a treaty. But America built the damn canal, right?
And should have a say in where it goes. And in addition, China, with these alliances, is taking a control of the most food productive areas of Africa.
Yeah.
You know,
Where there happens to be lithium mines as well.
Yes. I mean, and whoever owns food rules.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just saying that when you go to this website, keepafa.com, you will find that there's all kinds of stuff that should put a light bulb on going, holy cow, these guys, they got an A game.
Oh, sure.
And we better know what it is or we can't even counter it.
Well, Mao had all his famous 10-year and 20-year plans.
Yes, he
right?
did.
But they don't think in the short term. They think long term. You know, so at this point in the program, we always also, after we do the outrage, Brett, did you have an outrage?
Just the total political scene.
There you go.
Are you sick?
know,
I couldn't be more sick of all the ads.
I know.
And all.
And luckily, my wife and I choose a lot of media that has no ads. And the ones that I have been watching that with the ads in, it's like, oh my God.
The Hallmark Channel.
Exactly.
I'm joking.
I actually watching some Hulu, and it's like, oh my God, they're the ads. Okay, I forgot how bad this was, sort of thing. So I've been fairly insulated of the lies.
Do you know
of the ads?
This is how outrageous
goodness.
it's gotten. Apparently, there was a headline in, I think it was in Bloomberg, because I was reading your article.
Okay.
But that the Harris campaign, and I don't know, probably others, are advertising on pornography channels.
Get out of really?
I mean, is
Wow.
that not crazy or what?
Yeah, that is.
Thinking about her origins, doesn't it almost seem appropriate
Wow.
in the political world?
Ba-dum-bum.
Yeah, no, really.
Interesting. No, wonderfully wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
Two things actually. So on election day, I didn't. This is good. I like this is there, but you don't think about it that your boss is required to let you go vote in Ohio.
Good.
They cannot stop you from allowing you to have ample time to go vote.
Okay.
So if your boss is pushing back,
Yeah.
it's illegal.
Okay.
You're allowed to
Okay.
go. And also, I thought this was interesting. So the question is, if someone votes early and dies before Election Day in Ohio, does that vote count? It does.
Good.
They're not going to, go search it out, that sort of thing. So if you,
Interesting.
So then that's and that's from LaRosa's office saying, typically.
Secretary of State Frank LaRose.
We're not going to go search it up, But
I-
anyway, I thought those were two positive things that you were going to go vote. Go vote. No one can stop you.
Do you have a wonderful thing?
I have a really important thing off of voting.
Okay.
I talked to a state central committee gal yesterday.
Okay.
And there is some folks have seen where their ballot has changed. So when you go to turn your ballot in, it would be a good idea to make sure, check your machine.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Make sure nothing has changed. Just don't punch it in.
There's that review panel.
There's a review.
Go
Check
through
the review carefully
and make
sure nothing flipped.
Gotcha.
That's really important.
And
it won't take you but a minute longer, but it's an important minute.
And the other thing is, since so many Ohioans voted ahead of time, mail ballot, there is a tracking system that you can make sure that it was received, okay, and that therefore it was counted.
Yes.
Right.
So there is a way to track that.
And you'll get an email notification too that they received it.
Yes.
So
if you give them an email,
right,
because
right,
you could
right.
just do
Allow
a phone
that.
number if you wanted
Yeah,
to.
whatever it might be. Yep.
My wonderful thing is, I love this. As a young man, I was just obsessed with how beautiful this political commentator was on the other side of the aisle. But feminist Naomi Wolf, who Jewish, beautiful woman, she was on Nightline with Ted Koppel back in the day when I was in college. She was, if you will, part of that third wave of feminism, replacing Bella and, Gloria Steinem and all of her predecessors. And she, on Steve Bannon's show, has endorsed Trump. And the reason, her primary reason, she went to a meeting in New York City and heard him talk about Israel. And clearly, he's no Hitler. He is a friend of the Jewish people. And number two, his family is part Jewish. I mean, he's got a daughter and a son-in-law and grandchildren that are Jewish.
Trump too.
But she said the main reason that she can no longer be part of the Democratic Party as it is today is that they suppressed her speech. She cannot get over the idea that people were deplatformed during COVID. And she wanted to point out, and in her columns and in her social media posts, she wanted to point out that the vaccines, and this is just a matter of fact, this is not an opinion, that they didn't go through human trials. It was rolled out. It was an experiment on the human beings. And there are other people, including Holocaust survivors, who will note that the Nuremberg laws passed after World War II prevented unknowing experimentation on human beings. And the COVID vaccines were every bit of that because you were forced, if you were in the military or if you were a military contractor or a nurse,
That's right.
or a doctor, you were forced to take that vaccine. And even a religious exemption didn't hold up for most people.
Right.
And so she is flipping to vote for Trump. Now, I don't know if she's going to become a Republican, but I think it's amazing, and it shows the big tent that he's built. He's got people like Elon Musk, who was a Democrat. Trump himself was a Democrat. Trump's wife is pro-abortion, right? So he is not excluding people from his tent. Even if you and I might disagree with any number of some of these people on other issues, but the fundamental thing about the United States, sorry I'm making a speech, but the big thing to me that everything else comes from, right, is the First Amendment, the right to free speech. Eileen, if she cannot go down and freely speak at a public meeting, the right to free assembly and the right to speak, then what can the people of Pataskala ever do or ever say to try to influence events in their local community? So
nice way to wrap this up. Wow. Did you see that little bow he
That's
just
right,
created
that's
right in the
right.
air there?
That's right. Well, we wouldn't be here without the First Amendment. And it's important we all vote properly so we can continue to be here and you can learn more.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, Eileen.
Thank
we
you.
are having you back for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is such a huge topic. And I
passed.
think Brett's point about bringing in some of the allegiance.
Just to see, let's learn how this legislation gets made.
Yes.
What's the process?
Right.
How can we continue to support it, understand what's going on,
Right.
keep monitoring it, that it doesn't get modified?
Let's put gets modified in the right way.
Right, exactly.
Let's put a no NDA proviso. in
Those
there.
kind of stuff, and change what's the best percentage of that
Right.
get away from the 5149, and also the ghost in the machine about, okay, if it's down to 35, okay, still what's 35? We need to see the 35%.
Right.
Whatever the case might be. So
Whatever the case might be. That's
I
right.
think it'd be great. So that's that'll do it for this week. CommonSenseOhioShow.com. Everything you need to know about us will be there. Thanks.